Welcome back, everyone. This is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage, and you are looking at what you've been looking at for the last several videos, my Necchi Supernova. In one of my last videos, of course, I showed you guys how I went down. First of all, I had to take all of the parts of the tension assembly for this machine, which may have never come apart since 1957 when they were put together in the factory in Pavia, Italy. But I wanted to show you guys how I approached this. Now, I think I've shown this on the much more frequently found Singer straight stitch sewing machines and how you can disassemble, clean, and then reassemble those tension assemblies, the unit that is used for controlling upper tension on your vintage sewing machine. And so in the last videos, I went and I showed you guys how I would take each part, submerge it in 99% rubbing alcohol for a short time. I didn't leave it in there long. That was just to soften up the old grease or oil or whatever was on there. And I did this with each piece. I also disassembled, I think in the first video, when I'm talking about this piece of the unit had these two pieces in it. And then I went ahead and removed the these two pieces so I could get inside. And I'm glad I did. There was a little bit of lint in here and mostly just old grease and oil and goop, for lack of a better word. And all of that has been cleaned. I cleaned these items with the alcohol and lots of cotton swabs, which you can see my little pile sitting right there. And then I went back and I used my lovely Wienal polish, metal polish. And what I discovered is I was quite fortunate that virtually all of my pieces, they only required polishing. I didn't really have any corrosion because you can't always tell when something is covered in old oil and grease. Sometimes that old oil, there really shouldn't have been any oil in here to begin with, other than maybe just some surface stuff to keep things from oxidizing. But in a sort of an odd way, whoever put grease or oil in this thing actually ended up helping to keep corrosion off of it. You'll see pieces like this one where you see, oh, is that corrosion? No, actually it's very smooth. If your fingernail can run across it and you're not getting any major interruption, then you should be okay. Now, one of the things to note here is I had one of these pieces, I had a rather sharp, if I can find it again, I had a fairly deep pit, and I don't even know why. Here it is right here, right? So you guys can see the little discoloring here. Maybe you can see it right. Trying to see what it looks like on the camera for it. Right there, right there. And I took some of the, the wet dry sandpaper. I started with 1,000 and then went to 1,500, 2,000. Again, you're not grinding these down because these are balanced. You don't want to throw them off. But again, the light sanding I did is fine. It got rid of the pitting, and then I went back again with the polish. So it looks pretty good. I'm very happy with how that turned out. But the other primary thing I wanted to show you all is how to reassemble this. Now, reassembling is also a good way to show you how it disassembles. It's simply the reverse order. So anyway, I just wanted to show this to you. And of course, I went here behind when I already had everything out, and I went ahead and cleaned, got a lot of the staining, a little bit left here, but I've gotten a huge amount of that off. And I'm not done buffing and cleaning here, but I've gotten a lot of the staining off of this machine, which is great. So now we're going to put this back together, and I'll show you guys how it forms and reassembles. So with that in mind, I'm going to shift the angle here a little bit, and I'm going to try to zoom in. I want to zoom in on the machine. And by the way, just as a reminder, when I took these parts off, I took them off in the order they were on. And so, for example, this, which you guys will recognize if you've seen a Supernova, this is, of course, the top piece. When I unscrewed it, I took it off and placed it just like this. So I want everything in the same order. You can also take photographs of every time you take something off a machine like this when you're disassembling something, and that will help you remember what you did, because if you don't have the service manual, I don't actually have a copy, or I think I did somewhere on the service manual on this one, but I didn't need it because I just simply made sure that I could remember what I was doing and how I did it. So let's see, I may try to bring the machine a little closer to us instead of trying to fiddle with the camera angle. Let's try that and see if that helps. Okay, so if everything came off the machine starting here, we're going to reassemble starting in the reverse order. So you'll notice that this has its concave side up, so it's going to go back on like this. And again, I've already put some sewing machine oil on the threads here of the bolt, because things have to go back. This, of course, is a piece you would not have on a straight stitch sewing machine, one that's dedicated straight stitch, and even a lot of those that were zigzag did not have this as an option. But Necchi wanted to wow customers in 1957, and so they had double needle stitch capability, and in order to do that you have to have a path for 2 threads through the tension assembly. So this disc is, I'm sure there's an official name for it. You guys help me if you know. I don't know what it is. And for the purposes of the video, I don't really need that info right in front of me at the moment. But this is a disc that goes on, and it basically is going to function, instead of being concave on one side, convex on the other, it's actually the same surface. And it's designed to mate so that we can mate it with this, the first disc I put on. And of course, if you look here, you will see now I have the convex shape. This is how this came off, because remember guys, when you're trying to assemble something like a tension assembly, they only go together one way. They were engineered to work a certain way, and if you put them on backwards, or if someone else has done that and you're not aware of it, that can sometimes be a source of problems. So again, I took it off like this, and now that I've cleaned it and done everything I need to do, it goes back on the same, okay? Because your thread is going to rest between 2 convex surfaces, okay? Your thread doesn't rest on the concave side. It always is on the side that is convex or bulging outward, to be really simple about it. So we're going to, again, put it on the same direction it came off. What's next? Well, we have this piece. Now this piece actually, it was like this, and I actually had it, I should have had it like this. I think I did, and then I've been cleaning it. Anyway, it's going to go on. You'll see here, and I cleaned all the little divots there out that were full of old oil and crud, but it's been polished. So we have a nice film of polish to protect it against future corrosion. Anyway, it's going to go on like that, just like that. Now, this next section is one that can trip you up if you're not watching, so I'm going to take a little more time to show this to you. This, of course, and a lot of these pieces are made either with nickel-plated steel or they are aluminum. This particular one is either steel. I could check it with my magnet if I wanted to. It's either steel painted, or it is actual aluminum. And I was looking to see, I don't see any nicks in the paint here. So in any case, it goes on in a certain way. Now, it's going to go on. Remember, you have these, remember that bar that goes across the center of that hole? You might think, well, how is this going to go on this bolt? Because remember, the bolt, which is part of the assembly right here, zoom in here, it has an opening, right? It has a slit here, right there, that runs horizontally, and that is what this is going to go on. Now, it can't go on this way, because then nothing can sit inside of it. You want it to go on this way. Now, you have 2 slots, one here and one directly opposite. And you guys should be able to guess which way this is going to go. It can either go this way or this way. Well, if you put it upside down, who knows, it could function, but you wouldn't be able to read your tension levels. And Necchi had, this is my favorite, well, I shouldn't say my favorite, other than the Vintage Singers. This is one of my favorite tension assemblies. This thing alone today would cost a fortune to reproduce, and sewing machines don't have this for a reason. Yes, they have computerized tension adjustment, But the quality of this piece is you know, it's gone. It's part of the past now. But we have it right in front of us. Okay, so it's going to go on like that. Okay, and of course the little bar fits right into the slit. It's going to go like that. Now, when you go to put this in, one thing you can do is you can go ahead and load it with the other pieces. Let me zoom back out here because I'm getting a little too close in. Okay, so you have this spring, a beautiful quality. It sits in here like this, and you want to try to center it as best you can, and it might want to slide on you, but you can see it sitting in there. Now, I'm going to take this. Now, this is painted black. I think this is aluminum. I just don't think it's plastic because it doesn't flex like it is. Now, if you do this wrong, it will not go in. You want this piece you want to turn it over. So it looks sort of like I don't know, like the rim of a hat with a hole in the top, right? So it's going to look just like this. Now, this, because if you go over here on this side, it's concave, right? It actually looks like the opening of a bottle or something, right? But you want the convex one, and it looks, again, if it looks like a little flat, squashed top hat, it's the only metaphor I can think of, that's how you want it to be when you go to put it in. Now, you'll notice that it has a nib, or a little extension on two sides, one at 12 o'clock, one at 6 o'clock. You can think of it that way. These two pieces on the end, these little nibs, for lack of a better term, they have to line up with the slits or the slots on both sides of this. Okay? There's only two, right? So you know that it's going to have to go. So we got the top hat, right? So we got the top hat shape. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this, and think of this as a cap right on top of the spring. Just going to sit it there. Okay, it should rest right there because this spring is designed to fit in the wider space of this black piece on the other side of it, right? Now, it's not installed yet, so what we want to do is press down, and we're just going to press in, and now what has happened? Why is it sitting here and not coming out? Because now those two little extensions, nibs, whatever I'm trying to call them here, now you will see it, hold on, you will see them, and you will see it right, where's my pointer when I need it? You will see the nib is now here. And you want this because you're going to need this. This is part of how you're going to read your tension. And then the other one is right here, okay? If you try to do it the opposite way, it will fight with you, and you could even damage it, as strong as it is. So save yourself a lot of time and frustration and just do it in this order, and you should be fine. Now, before you put this in, remember, look and make sure you have the markings, right? Because they're only on one side. They're not down here. And if you do it wrong, you can redo it. It's not the end of the world, but just to save yourself the time and aggravation, right? Now, when we get the rest of this installed, notice that when you push in on it, notice the little nib moves and lines up with a number that tells you where you are in your tensioning. And of course, your manual will tell you what number should you set the tension based on what you're sewing and so forth. But let's go ahead and we'll take this. And remember, we got to have our bar lined up horizontally. If you got it like this, it's not going to go on. So be patient with yourself. We got this, got it all together, and we are going to put it in just like that. Now, you have to be careful because what's happening here? This piece is staying put, the spring is staying put, but the whole thing kind of wants to just hang and flop off because remember, it's not mounted yet. It's just kind of sitting there, sorta. Okay, we have two more pieces to get installed here. This spring, I think they're often called beehive springs because of their shape, kind of a cone shape. Unlike with the Singers, where you often will have them go with the wide base of the spring in first, and then the narrow side outward, it's the opposite. Okay, don't think Singer, think Necchi, because they did it their own way. So we're going to take this spring, we're going to put it right here. In fact, another option is to simply rest the wide base of the spring right in here, And don't you know, it fits beautifully because it was engineered to. And if you want, you can simply do as I'm doing. It might be easier because if you put the spring on here, you know, who knows, the spring could plop off, and maybe not. But 6, 1/2 dozen as far as, you know, well, which way should I do this? You know, let's try it this way. But make sure this does not come off, okay? You don't want this falling onto the floor, flopping around. You can see it's just barely hanging on there, but don't, you know, just, here we go. So I've taken the spring, I've got the wide base that's going into what is going to be the cap of this whole project, and we've got the spring again. The narrow end of the beehive spring is going to go toward the machine, which is the opposite of the singer's. And so I'm going to take it, hold this upright if you need to, and I'm going to take, the spring should come right over the bolt, okay? Press in and begin to turn, hold it until you feel it moving, and you'll feel this beautiful piece here beginning to do what? It is beginning to, of course, engage, and it is mounting this amazing tension assembly, which I think I've seen on a few FOFs, but mostly Necchi's. And Necchi would eventually change this, and I suspect they did it to save money. That doesn't mean if you have a Necchi that has either the tension assembly that came before this design or the one after, I'm sure they're fine. I think I have had machines with the other assemblies, and they were fine. So don't, you know, this is not the be and end all of the entire universe here. I'm simply saying I suspect this was the most costly tension assembly to build, and it was designed, like so many things from the past, to come apart, to be cared for, to be maintenanced. This is not normal maintenance, guys. You do not feel like you need to do this once a year, unless you're having issues with it. Now I'm going to move the camera because I want a nice close-up of this, and I want to show you why Necchi went to all the trouble to do it this way. So hold on for me just a moment. Okay, I have moved my camera and elevated it to get an aerial view. Let's zoom in. There we go. I've got some good natural light today, some sunlight finally. So I really wanted to be able to do this with good lighting. Sometimes it doesn't matter how fancy your camera or your recording tools are. You really need good light, and this light makes people happy, and it makes for good videos. So now you see, remember those little nibs that I was talking about, the ones that fit in these slots? They have a purpose. What is their purpose? Their purpose is to actually give you a number. Now remember, when you're setting tension, be careful, because once you get to this outer level, I think we're right at 1. If you keep going to the left to loosen this, it will fall off in your hand. Don't let it drop. You don't want to scratch it or anything. But this would be very loose tension, right? There may be times it's called for, but most of the time you may, depends on the sewing you're doing, you may end up, oh, I don't know, where are we at here? Between 3 and 4, or even tighter. But notice, you may say, well, how do I know I've got it in right? And well, here's how you'll know. As you keep going, this little nib that I'm referring to right here should be willing to go as far as your highest number for tension, which is 6. These numbers read 0, 2, 4, and then that last one up there is 6. Let's see if I can, there we go. I think it shows up now for you now. Okay, so if you keep turning, and you'll notice you get a little more resistance because the spring is compressing. That's normal, that's okay, but it should move freely for you, okay? And then it stops. Where did it stop? It actually stopped just above the 6 mark. That means you've installed this right, and then you can come back and you can turn it again, and it moves smoothly. It is one of the finest tension assemblies ever in the history of sewing machines. And that's an over-the-top remark, and I'm willing to defend it. So there you go. If you have one you like better, please share it. You know, this is an analog device. It's not digital. But when it comes to analog tension setting, I don't know that anyone ever created anything as complex and beautifully made and expensively made as this one. But again, I love the simpler ones from Singer. They are also wonderful in that you can disassemble them, clean them, repair them, replace things like the spring. Anyway, my spring here, which is fantastic, got lots of life in it. So we'll just leave it here for now. But there you go, guys. This is how, oh, by the way, after all of my cleaning, you can still see some of the staining here. Again, this is not functional, it's aesthetic, but you it'd be really nice to be able to get more of this. And I'll be going over this because I've got some discolorations here. You can see, you can even see more of that coming off. So this is how you basically reassemble the tension assembly on a Necchi Supernova. Now, you might look at this and say, well, yeah, but I need to take mine apart. You're going to do exactly the opposite of everything I just demonstrated for you. You take this off, keeping in mind that everything behind here could flop off, so be careful, right? Hold this just lightly with your fingers as you undo this, right? And then you'll take everything off in the order in which I showed it, and you should be fine. And again, there are service manuals that will show you this. Sometimes a video can be helpful because the old manuals, they were hand drawn and sometimes they give a lot of information, but the illustrations aren't always fantastic. So there you have it, guys. The Necchi Supernova. You can take apart its tension assembly. You can clean it, you can polish it, and you can put it back. So, do you have any comments or questions, or maybe you've done one of these before, maybe you've found a different way to do it? Feel free to share, and we will see you in the next video. Thank you, everyone.